All right, guys, are you thinking about buying an airplane like the Challenger 2, but there's a few things that make you nervous about it? Or do you wonder why they're probably the most bought and sold type of aircraft? And I'm not just talking Challenger, I'm talking all of these experimental, home-built, ultralight design aircraft. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the things that I was worried about, because I'm man enough to disclose that, and things that I think you should think about when you're buying these things. But at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you whether or not you should trust your airplane. So the answer might surprise you. So stick around for that. I think we're going to be talking about mainly this. We have two-stroke engines on most of them. Some of them don't. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. If you're thinking about buying a plane, then I know it's going through your brain. I was there. I went through the phase of, okay, you know, can I trust this? Does it make sense? You know, is it safe? And golly, and there's multiple answers to that. And so in this video, we're going to go over all those answers. So few things really quick. I am not a mechanic. I'm going to be talking about two strokes today, but I'm not going to be talking about the internal mechanisms of two strokes, because realistically, I don't know anything about them. So I'm probably going to put the plane back in the hangar. I just did a flight doing some stalls, and man, I got beat up. It was really bumpy. It was not scary, but it was enough to where I only did a couple stalls and called it. So if you watch that video and it was lackluster, or if I haven't put it out yet, I'm sorry, but I'm going to do a better one later. I just want to put some stuff up, keep you guys going, keep you in the loop of what I got going on. So I definitely think it's funny. You see that clob of dirt up there? I guess it's actually connected pretty good. And that little dead spider thing, it's funny. I just flew, and you would think that stuff would come off, but it doesn't, because science, that's why. So here's the engine in question. I have a Rotax 503, and I grew up with Rotax 503. My dad, we had ultralights, and my dad had, like I've talked about before, my dad had started a company building ultralights called Freebird. Now it's called Freebird Innovations. And yeah, so I grew up with them, and so my relationship with them is odd, because do I trust two-stroke engines? Absolutely. But do I understand where the apprehension comes from people? Yeah, of course. And I'm going to show you why in a second here. Obviously, Challenger 1, the ultralight version, that's Roberts. Same thing, it's got a two-stroke on it. So let me put the plane back in the hangar, and then I'm going to talk to you guys about the things I think that you're probably worried about. And maybe you don't want to tell anybody, okay? Shh. It's our secret. I'll be the one to disclose the fear of these things. You can just watch the video and look over at your husband or wife and go, not me. I'm not scared of it. But I'm just going to tell you the reality, the facts. I literally grew up sitting in a Quicksilver and Freebird and stuff like that. So I'm coming at this from a weird angle. I'm coming at it from an angle of already having done a lot of flying in planes with two strokes and just sitting there listening. So yeah, let me put you away for a second, and I'm gonna put the plane away, and then we're gonna talk about it, because I think I know what's on your mind. All right, guys, I got the plane in the hangar after my 30-minute stall flight, and I'm already pouring sweat because it's East Texas and it's August. So this says father, so no, it doesn't say anything else. But anyways, I've been called that. So guys, earlier in this intro, I said that this is the most bought and sold airplane. I don't know if that's true or not. It's just based off of my observation. There's no stats. I don't have anybody who's done stats and said, oh, hey, the Challenger or the Kolb or the whatever is the most bought and sold. The reason I said that was because I see them for sale all the time, the same ones. This airplane has had multiple owners, multiple. And from what I can tell, the only one who actually flew it after like the guy who built it, which it was a guy, I know it was a guy who built it because of the paperwork, was Ken. And that's the person that I purchased it from. And Ken is a cowboy. Like, he's a go-getter. If he's got it, he's flying it. So I think he probably put 20 hours on it. You know, I've put a lot of hours on it. So it's been getting a lot of flight time now. But the reason I'm saying all this is to tell you that people buy them all the time. This airplane has sat in a hangar for years, I found out. It's sat in a garage with the wings off for years, I found out. One guy owned it, but taxied it a lot and didn't fly it. So that's 3 of the people who owned it and that I've talked to, because I reached out, I found the people who owned it and I reached out and talked to them so I could figure out what they knew about it and try to get the history on it. Doesn't appear to have any accidents or anything like that. And the engine tested out good. So anyways, why are people nervous about buying airplanes like this? It's really simple, guys. There's multiple things. I'm gonna get into the most important one last. These are built by people in their garage, in their hangars, and you don't have to be certified. You can be anybody. You can buy a kit and buy this plane and build it in your garage, and then you put it out there. For all I know, the guy who built this plane, on the day he was putting in the most important part of the plane, like installing something that was really important, maybe he had a bad day. Maybe he was a drunk. I have no idea. Maybe him and his wife were arguing. I don't know. You'd never know. It's like when you buy a car, you know, you just never know. Now, I will say this airplane was built in the 90s and it's had no accidents. I've flown the crap out of it. I trust this plane. At this point, I've seen every nut and bolt with the exception of stuff that's under the fabric. So I'm not as worried about it now that I understand the plane a lot better. You know, in trusting your plane, you should really get to know it. Now, I'm not like a super knowledgeable. If someone says, hey, what about this with Challenger and blah, blah, I probably don't know. I just know my airplane and I know the nuts and bolts in it and I know what I need to do to be safe. I like to go fly. I'm not a person who wants to build planes or anything like that. So one of the big things people are nervous about when they buy a plane like this is who built it. So that's one thing, because you just never know. But if an airplane's got flight time, you should probably be able to trust it, have it checked out really good before you buy it. And you know, the next thing in line, let me pull you off of here. The next thing that is why people are nervous about planes like this is pretty simple, guys and gals. Nuts and bolts and rivets. Do you trust bolts and nuts and rivets and little, like, you know, brackets? Because that's all this plane is, guys. These are all, like, if you look in here, everything is a rivet, a nut, and a bolt. And in your pre-flight, you need to put your hands on them. Actually, Jason, I don't know how much he wants me to disclose because it's not even a big deal, but he found a couple loose rivets in his pre-flight yesterday. I'm so proud of the guy. He decided not to fly. He could have flown, but it wasn't a good idea, so he didn't fly. I wouldn't have either, so good decision on him. But this is one reason people are apprehensive of these type of aircraft. That, and then some people obviously are nervous about fabric. I don't know, this fabric did pass a punch test, but I don't know how old it is. So it's quality, it's been indoors. I know it spent, sorry, you can't see me. I know this airplane has spent many years in a garage and in a hangar without being flown. So it probably doesn't have much sun rot. I've never had it out in the sun except for going to fly-ins and stuff. Yeah, so that's something that I think people are nervous about. I'm gonna use the word scared. You can watch this video and say, well, I'm not scared and blah, blah, blah. But like, listen, I had lots of hours flying in these type of airplane before I bought mine, and I was even scared. There should be no shame in that. Like, we're humans. If something doesn't scare you, then you're like some type of path, a sociopath or a psychopath, or I don't know. Things scare us in life. If somebody told me they bought an airplane like this and they didn't have one thought about fear of anything, I'm like, you're just lying. And if that's how you want to go about it, that's on you. But the reality is it can be scary, but you can reduce the fear by having a deep knowledge of the airplane. And there's a few other things, the most important things I'm coming up on here, guys. I'm not trying to tease you. Let's move on from the nuts and the bolts and the fabric and the fact that somebody built it who knows. It could have been, you know, anybody could have built this airplane. You never know. So let me get into why I think there is some apprehension about this version of airplane with a two-stroke engine. That's right, guys. It's because we've grown up using two-stroke items like our weed eater. And we all know that weed eaters like a lot of RPMs. They always want to go. But if you neglect it and you're not giving it RPMs, it'll shut down. It'll even do that when it's cold, when it's hot, cold. All the weed eaters we have, if you're not giving it throttle, you're just walking around, it'll run a little longer than that just did right now. It's mainly because it's cold, but yeah, it'll shut down. And the same goes for our engines. If your RPMs are set really low, then your airplane can and will shut off when you throttle back. All right, sorry, I set the weed eater down. So there is a big difference. I know what you're saying. There's probably like Rotax Rick or somebody watching this going, John, they're not the same engine. I understand that, but they're the same concept. And again, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not gonna get into the mechanics of it, but they are two-stroke. They require mixed fuel and they have the same, the same concept. Some two-strokes though, like our 503s or some of our 503s, they have redundancy. And this is something that you can get that'll make you feel more safe in your airplane. Most of these airplanes do have this redundancy. Luckily, I have two airplanes in here, one that has a lot of redundancy and one that has none redundancy. So sorry, it just rhymed. Redundancy, for you who don't know, means, there's more than one thing in place to kind of keep you safe. For example, I have a mechanical fuel pump. This is what's always pushing fuel into the engine. If this doesn't work, then in there I have an electric fuel pump that's on a switch, which you run when you're taking off or landing for safety, just in case this gives out. We have two carburetors, okay? And I have two sets of plugs. So there's like two coils or whatever they're called. And they're redundancy. They're giving you so there's two carbs. So, if one of them gets clogged up, it might run rough, but you can get somewhere. Two sources of fuel injecting into the carbs, and then two sets of plugs, so you're always getting spark. I've been running the NGK Iridium, and they are great. I have never had them foul, but at the same time, I've learned my engine and I know how to start it and I know what it looks for. Also, I do have a pull on here, so if my battery's dead and I'm somewhere, I literally have my plane down so much that one pull and it started. So that is a two-stroke engine with redundancy. Sorry, I'm walking through the dark here. Now, this airplane's great, but to be an ultralight, it can't have redundancy because redundancy equals weight. So now you're looking at the 377 Rotax. Very lightweight airplane. And you see here, look at this, one carb. See this down here? One set of plugs, which there's two, but there's four on the 503. There's not really any redundancy here. Mechanical fuel pump. There is no electric fuel pump on this airplane. And this airplane relies on pull start. In my airplane and most airplanes that are registered have a button so you can start it from inside the plane. For example, when my engine went out down in Jacksonville, it's because the idle was set too low and we were messing with things. And it shut off and it was flooded because the fuel pump that was in there was 15 PSI, it turns out. It was way too high. Nobody's fault. They all look exactly the same. So for all I know, the guy who put it in there ordered a 5 and got a 15, and that was not his fault. But I was still able to try to restart while I was on my way back to the airport. Luckily, I was high enough and I had enough. There wasn't a lot of headwind, so I was able to make it back to the airport. That video is in my channel too. You can go back and watch that. I do cuss, so warning on that. But that button gives me redundancy, so I'm able to start the plane back up if it shuts down. So, okay, so question is, should you trust your airplane? The answer to that is no. Have a healthy relationship with your airplane, but also fear your airplane, because if you're fearing your airplane, you're really taking things into consideration. Let me tell you a few things here. For starters, you should always be putting on new fuel lines, new plugs. Like plugs, I'm doing plugs probably every 40 hours. I have some spare ones sitting over there now. Fuel filters should literally be every probably 10 to 20 hours. I actually have some new ones I'm about to put on. If you do things like that, you will greatly reduce your risk of having a problem with your airplane. But they are still two strokes. It's like having a pit bull. Sorry, dog people, I know. But it's kind of like having a pit bull. We just had a pit bull, Petey. Unfortunately, Petey got struck by a car. Rest in peace. But he was a great dog, a loving, caring, great dog. But you just never knew when someone came around whether he was gonna bite him or not, because we just couldn't. And that's all. I understand. There's people. Oh, pit bulls are great. I understand that. We had one. I understand that. But it's like a dog. It's unpredictable. So you never know. So you want to take precautions. So should you trust your plane? To a certain extent, yes, but realistically, no, because you never know what could possibly happen. So the question is, What can you do to make it to where you're comfortable flying your plane? I've got the answer for you. That's what we're here for. It's two things. Number one, it's flight preparation. And I'm going to show you that in a second. Right now, I'm going to tell you don't have comfort in your airplane. Have comfort in you, in what you would do when your airplane decides to fail you. That gives me the most comfort. The most comfort I have in my airplane is knowing that I can handle a situation in the plane and I'm going to walk away. We're probably going to put the wings on a trailer and bring it back to the airport and figure out what's going on, because that's how I fly. I always know what direction the wind's coming from so that I can try to aim into it, slow myself down, just know what the flight characteristics of the plane are going to be in the weather. I'm just always prepared, guys. And that's what you should do too. So should you trust it? Yes, but no. Trust yourself. Become the best aviator you can. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm some Chuck Yeager or some Wright brother, but I do plan my days, my trips around safety. And I'll explain that to you here. Actually, we'll go to the iPad. All right, guys, so I don't know if you can see this or not. When I go into my ForeFlight, and I'm planning a trip, okay, let me clear this. Say I'm planning a trip from Vakamu, and I'm going to add it to the trip. Then I'm going to go to, actually I'm doing this trip soon, going to KTRL, which is Terrell, Texas. And I add it to my trip. Well, what I like to do, guys, is I like to go up here in my modes and take off the sectional, because now it shows me the satellite view. And I will put checkpoints to go around. Like, obviously this flight is nothing. That's a very safe flight. But if the flight has a forested area, I simply plan my trip around it. And also, you have to plan your trip around it based off the winds, because if you have a 20-mile-an-hour tailwind and you're on the opposite side, the fields are on the opposite side, you need to be able to get over there. So you have to plan your trip around the winds and the fields that are in your area. Geez, I'm so sorry I'm sweating out here. It's getting hot. So prepare your trips to the best of your ability. If you do those two things, guys, if you trust yourself, and by trusting yourself, I mean going out and doing stalls, doing engine off. You know, the only time I've landed this thing engine off is when the engine actually turned off. And let me tell you something, it surprised me. This airplane was like, hey, we're going to make it back to the airport. And I did not have to do much to it. You'll see in the video if you go back and watch it. But from that day on, I told myself I was going to be way more prepared, because I had no options. If I was in that airplane at that airport when that happened, I would have been in trees, without a doubt. There's no question. So always be prepared. Now, there is a way to get in and out of that airport without being around that many trees. You just have to plan it out, and you have to get in the pattern and use your voice. And that's what I do, guys. I very rarely am in a position to where there's any actual danger. And when I am, I'm typically by myself, you know, because I'm willing to assume that danger on my own. If I'm flying to an airport, and like for example, I flew to Gladewater to give Robert a ride. Well, before I even left my airport, I had already looked at his airport, and I knew what runways, and I knew, like, for example, if I'm climbing out of the runway, whatever, I knew that if the engine shut off, I could only really go left because of the wind and because of the field. And in my mind, I already know what that field looks like. And I remember saying, okay, there's a tree on the south side of the field. So, you know, if you have to make that approach, blah, blah, blah. I'll even zoom in and look for barbed wire fences for the fields that are right there. Because the most critical time is going to be when you're taking off. That's when you're loaded under a lot of power. And it's the most dangerous, because if you lose the engine, you have to pick up speed. You got to get your nose down. So the whole moral of the story, guys, is your two-stroke engine can be super reliable. I know people who have thousands of hours in them and have never had an engine problem. I know people like my dad, who was doing a lot of test flying and stuff, who's had multiple Rotax issues. I've been flying next to my dad, and boom, the engine just shuts off. And I was in a Quicksilver 2, and he was in another Quicksilver. I was with his friend. He had a 582, and my dad's was a 503, and it went out, and he landed down in the field. So, also, like when my dad was test flying a Freebird one time, I'd have to ask him Sorry about this, guys. I'd have to ask him, but I'm pretty sure that airplane had a 503 too. And actually, I know it had a 503. And I was at the airport with my dad's business partner in Page, South Carolina. And we were sitting there waiting, and he took off and he was flying. And this airplane had never flown before. It was a first flight. And it got really quiet. And it was a really long time. And but my dad's kind of a wild man. So we were like, well, he's probably out there putting it to the test. And within 5 or 10 minutes, a truck flies into the airport property with a strobe light on top. Like he had mounted a magnetic strobe light because he was a volunteer firefighter. And he came up to us and said, hey, are you guys here with an airplane? And we said, yeah, well, it's a white Freebird. It's like this, you know, Challenge or a ultralight looking airplane. He's like, yeah, man, that thing crashed. Come with me. I'll take you guys to him. And I freaked out because I was just a little kid, you know? So me and Sherman get in his vehicle and we drive, and it turns out my dad didn't, people love to say the word crashed. My dad didn't crash. The engine had failed him, and he landed in Page, just south of the Page airport in South Carolina, on the thin road with trees on both sides, and he landed uphill in traffic, and it was beautiful. He did a great job. But the moral of the story is, you know, you can trust things all day long, but there are going to be times they fail you. So don't trust the airplane, trust yourself, trust your abilities, trust your skills, build your skills, come up with good flight plans, talk with instructors. That's the most important thing. I'm not an instructor. You know, I make these videos, so you can watch these if you need the encouragement, but talk to your instructor. Tell your instructor, hey, you know what? I'm buying this 2-stroke plane. I want to go out and I want to practice a lot more emergencies because there's a higher chance you're going to have one in a plane like this. So remember, if you're with your instructor, there is a great difference in how the plane is going to respond with the instructor than without the instructor. So once the instructor is out of the plane and you have a comfort level with your airplane, then get in the pattern or get somewhere where there's a lot of fields, pull the power back. Commit to a landing, but do it safely, you know? Like, make sure you're always ready to bring the power back. Make sure your idle's not set too low so it don't die on you. And if it does die on you, just remember, fly the plane first. Don't worry about the engine, fly the plane. If you can get it restarted, great, but you know, don't stall. So, guys, this video is kind of random, somewhat requested. So I wanted to make sure I got this video done. Again, I'm not a CFI, I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy who has these planes and I understand it. And I'm not scared. I'm not a, man. I don't care. I was scared of this plane. I have a healthy fear of it, but I've mitigated it with my knowledge and with my flight planning. And you should do the same thing. And I have zero fear of this airplane. I have a high respect of this airplane because I know what can happen. And when it does happen, I have zero fear of my ability to handle it. So am I scared of the plane now? No. Do I have a healthy fear of it? Yes. And you could be the same way too. You just have to sharpen your skills. So if you haven't yet, please like the video. Liking is nothing and it really helps me out. You can just hit the like button. It's a little thumbs up. Just hit that. That'd really help me out. Like my buddy was telling me, it's absolutely free. Subscribing and liking is free. If you want, you could do super thanks. If you appreciate my videos, there's like I'll show you here. There's like a heart down there with the money thing. Obviously, you know, I don't get paid to do this. So I am part of the YouTube program, but realistically it's just pennies. So it's, you know, by the time you pay taxes, there's really nothing there. And then also I have an Amazon wish list. If somebody is really feeling grateful, there's an Amazon wish list in my thing, but it's all things that I'm going to use for the channel, more cameras, camping stuff, because come fall, we're going to be camping it up. Me and Justice especially. Jonah has a job, so I don't know how that's going to work out, but at a minimum, he'll go do some things. He'll do rec law. We're going to do rec law for sure. Also, guys, I am officially an affiliate for, and I talked about this in my last video, but I have some videos coming up where I'm going to install the long range tanks and the hard seat. But I am an affiliate for Giant Loop now. So that's the bags for fuel. So down in the description will be a link to Giant Loop. If you click that and you make a purchase, then like for every 5 or 6 purchases people make, I'll be able to get a bag for free. They actually just pay you a percentage, but like once I get the percentage up to a bag, I want to send it and get like a couple more bags so that I can extend my range when I'm solo. So if you made it this long, I appreciate you. You're great. The comments have been great, only a few negative, and that's okay. I understand them. You know, my videos are opinions. They're not facts. So this is just my opinion. I appreciate you guys watching, And I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, and we'll see you on the next one, guys.